watching. You're not watching.
Every director who steps behind the camera believes they're making something great. But somewhere along the way, things start to shift. The studio steps in, executives start rewriting scenes, test audiences panic and demand safer endings. Marketing teams sell a completely different movie than the one that was actually made. And before you even realize it, the film with your name on it stops feeling like yours at all. What you're about to see is a collection of moments where everything went wrong. From a director live tweeting, disowning his movie the night before it opened, to actors shouting lines that instantly became memes for all the wrong reasons, to producers standing in front of cameras admitting their own movies broke them. These aren't just bad movies, they are 11 full-scale production catastrophes, the kind where everyone involved quietly agrees to pretend it never happened. Let's dive in. Number 11. Aeon Flux, 2005. Before Charlize Theron became Furiosa, before she became the highest-paid action actress on the planet, she signed on to a project that nearly derailed everything. Aeon Flux was supposed to be her franchise, her matrix, her ticket to proving that a female-led sci-fi action film could dominate the box office. Instead, it became the movie she stopped talking about entirely. Here is what most people don't know. The original Aeon Flux was a genuinely brilliant animated series on MTV created by Peter Chung. Dark, surreal, philosophical. It was the kind of show that made you feel smarter for watching it and confused enough to rewatch it immediately. It had a cult following that was ravenous for a live-action adaptation. So Paramount greenlit the film with a $62 million budget, hired Karen Kusama fresh off her critically acclaimed debut Girl Fight, and gave her Charlize Theron, who had just won the Oscar for Monster. On paper, this was bulletproof. Then the studio panicked. Executives locked Kusama out of the editing room. They recut the entire film without her input, stripped out the weird, cerebral, atmospheric elements that made the source material special, and replaced them with generic action sequences and expository dialogue. The numbers were brutal. $62 million budget. 52 million worldwide gross. When you factor in marketing, that is a loss worth $60 million. And the saddest part is you can actually see glimpses of Kusama's real vision buried underneath all the studio interference. Strange compositions, odd pacing choices that feel intentional. Moments where the film is reaching for something genuinely ambitious before snapping back to safe, forgettable, studio-approved mediocrity. Number 10. Mimic, 1997. Mimic had everything going fine on paper. Del Toro fresh off Kronos, a genuinely terrifying premise rooted in real entomology. Mira Sorvino, coming off her Oscar win, is attached as the lead. Dimension Films backed the production. On paper, this should have been a genre landmark. Instead, it became a war zone. Harvey Weinstein reportedly re-edited the film without Del Toro's knowledge, demanded reshoots that contradicted the story's internal logic, and ordered set pieces rebuilt at enormous cost. Nearly $7 million went into creature effects alone. Practical puppets, animatronic insects standing over 6 feet tall. Del Toro insisted on building real, tangible monsters because he believed audiences could feel the difference between rubber and pixels. The production designed and fabricated more than 30 individual creature suits and puppet rigs across multiple stages in Toronto. Another $4 million went into recreating the New York subway system from scratch on sound stages because the city refused filming permits underground. Every dollar was on screen. This was a director swinging for the fences on his first Hollywood at-bat. When the film opened in August 1997, it earned just $25 million domestically against that swelling budget. Worldwide, it scraped together roughly $35 million, technically clearing costs on paper only if you ignore prints, marketing, and the quiet humiliation of a filmmaker disowning his own work in interviews. Del Toro did not just distance himself from the film, he documented the experience in detail, using it as a case study in how studio interference destroys authorship. Number 9. Wing Commander, 1999. Imagine spending $30 million on a film and your biggest selling point is the commercial that plays before it. Chris Roberts was a legend in the gaming world. His Wing Commander video game series had sold millions of copies and generated over $100 million in revenue throughout the 1990s. The games were cinematic, ambitious, and featured Hollywood actors like Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell in full-motion video cutscenes. So when Fox gave Roberts the chance to turn his beloved franchise into a feature film, he assumed the magic would translate. Unfortunately, it did not. Roberts cast Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard as hotshot space pilots. This was peak late 90s teen heartthrob casting, and it cost the production roughly $5 million combined for two actors who had zero credibility in the sci-fi space. Saffron Burrows was paid nearly $2 million for her role. The remaining $23 million went into sets, costumes, and visual effects so poor that fans of the original games openly mocked them on internet forums within hours of the first trailer dropping. The production was chaotic.
Give him a broadside, Mr. Gerald! Open fire!
Roberts had never directed a live-action film before and reportedly struggled with basic set logistics. He has since distanced himself from the theatrical cut, suggesting in interviews that studio interference compromised his original vision. The film opened to just $7.6 million on its first weekend. It finished its entire theatrical run at $11.5 million worldwide against that $30 million budget. When marketing costs are factored in, Fox likely lost somewhere around $40 million. Since then, Roberts never directed another film. He went back to video games and eventually created Star Citizen, a crowd-funded space sim that has raised over $600 million and still has not been finished. Number 8. Stealth, 2005. Stealth was supposed to be Top Gun for the 21st century. Columbia Pictures poured $135 million into this film. That number is staggering when you consider what they got in return. 3 elite Navy pilots played by Josh Lucas, Jessica Biel, and Jamie Foxx discover that their new AI wingman has developed a mind of its own after being struck by lightning. On paper, that premise is an absolute banger. Jamie Foxx had just won the Oscar for Ray when this film was released in the summer of 2005. His salary was reportedly around $10 million. Jessica Biel earned around $4 million. The production built full-scale fighter jet replicas costing over $2 million each, and filming locations spanned across Australia, Thailand, and multiple naval bases. The visual effects team rendered thousands of CGI shots to bring impossible aerial maneuvers to life, and the aerial sequences genuinely looked incredible. Despite all that, everything about Stealth went wrong. The movie opened to a humiliating $13.8 million domestically and finished its theatrical run at $31.6 million in the United States. Worldwide, it scraped together $76 million total against a $135 million budget, plus another estimated $60 million in marketing. Sony reportedly lost nearly $100 million on this single film. Rob Cohen, who had successfully launched the Fast and the Furious franchise, suddenly found himself toxic in Hollywood. He did not direct another studio film for 4 years. He never publicly championed stealth in interviews the way directors typically defend their work. The silence spoke volumes. The cruel irony is that a movie about artificial intelligence making terrible decisions was itself a product of terrible decisions made by very real humans. Sometimes the machine is not the problem. Sometimes it is the people who built it. Number 7. Mortal Engines, 2018. Peter Jackson spent over 15 years trying to bring Mortal Engines to the screen. He first optioned Philip Reeves' beloved novel back in 2004, right after finishing the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But he kept delaying because he wanted the technology to catch up with his vision. When it finally arrived, audiences simply did not show up. The concept was undeniably ambitious. Jackson co-wrote and produced the film, but handed directing duties to Christian Rivers, his longtime visual effects protege who had never directed a feature before. That decision raised eyebrows across the industry immediately. Universal Pictures committed $100 million to the production budget. Filming took place primarily at Jackson's own studios in Wellington, New Zealand, where enormous practical sets were constructed alongside cutting-edge digital environments. The costume department alone spent months designing hundreds of unique outfits reflecting the scavenged aesthetic of this fractured world. Weta Workshop, Jackson's effects company, built intricate miniatures and digital assets that were genuinely breathtaking. The cast featured relative unknowns in lead roles. Hera Hilmar and Robert Sheehan headlined, while Hugo Weaving took the villain role, reportedly for around $3 million. The studio gambled that Jackson's name as producer would carry the marketing. It did not. Mortal Engines opened to a catastrophic $7.5 million domestically during its opening weekend. It eventually earned just $16 million in North America and roughly $83 million worldwide. Against its massive budget and an estimated $100 million marketing campaign, Universal reportedly lost over $174 million. It became one of the biggest financial disasters of 2018. Number 6. Supernova, 2000. Before Supernova even reached theaters, it had already been abandoned by two directors. The project began in the mid-1990s under the title Dead Star. Jeffrey Wright was originally attached to direct, but he departed over creative differences with the studio. Walter Hill then stepped in, bringing serious credibility as the filmmaker behind Aliens and The Warriors. Hill cast James Spader and Angela Bassett in the lead roles, with Spader reportedly earning around $5 million. The production budget ballooned to approximately $90 million as elaborate spaceship sets were constructed and extensive zero-gravity sequences were filmed using complex wire rigs that took weeks to perfect. But yet, everything collapsed. Hill clashed repeatedly with MGM over the film's tone and direction. The studio wanted a commercial thriller.
You know what? You want to give me 5%?
Hill wanted something darker and more cerebral. Eventually, Hill reportedly walked away. He removed his name entirely from the finished product. The directing credit went to Thomas Lee, but the chaos did not stop there. Francis Ford Coppola was quietly brought in to help supervise editing and reshoot certain scenes. Jack Sholder also contributed additional directing work. So the final cut of Supernova is essentially a Frankenstein creation assembled from the visions of at least 3 different filmmakers, and none of them wanted credit for the result. The film opened in January 2000 to a dismal weekend gross of just over $14 million. It finished its domestic run at $14.8 million total, meaning almost nobody returned after opening weekend. Worldwide, it earned roughly $60 million, still well below its production and marketing costs. MGM absorbed a significant loss, and the film was immediately forgotten. Number 5. The Adventures of Pluto Nash, 2002. Eddie Murphy was once the most bankable star on the planet. In the late 1990s, his name alone could guarantee a $100 million domestic gross. So Warner Brothers did something that seemed logical at the time. They handed him a $100 million science fiction comedy set on the moon and assumed the investment was bulletproof. They were catastrophically wrong. The Adventures of Pluto Nash was filmed way back in 1999, but sat on a shelf for 3 full years because the studio had no idea how to sell it. Murphy played a nightclub owner on a lunar colony in the year 2087 who battles a mysterious villain trying to take over his business. Murphy reportedly earned $20 million for the role, which was his standard asking price during that era. Rosario Dawson received approximately $2 million, while Randy Quaid earned around $1.5 million. Behind the scenes, the production was troubled from early drafts. Director Ron Underwood clashed repeatedly with the studio over tone, with Murphy himself reportedly uncertain whether the film wanted to be a screwball comedy or a genuine science fiction adventure. It never resolved that question. When the film finally opened, it earned just $2.2 million in its opening weekend from over 2,300 screens. The film finished its entire domestic run at $7.1 million, making it one of the worst-performing wide-release films in modern Hollywood history. Number 4. Dune, 1984. Before Denis Villeneuve made Dune into a 2-part prestige masterpiece that won 6 Academy Awards, Another director tried first. David Lynch, the man behind Eraserhead and The Elephant Man, was handed $40 million to produce one of the most unfilmable novels in science fiction history. What resulted was so painful that Lynch had his name removed from the television cut and has refused to discuss the film in meaningful depth for 4 decades. Dune began production in Mexico at Churubusco Studios, where an entire desert planet was constructed across multiple enormous sound stages. The scale was genuinely staggering. Over 80 sets were built across 16 sound stages, making it one of the largest physical productions in film history at that point. The sandworm mechanical rigs alone cost millions, requiring teams of hydraulic engineers to operate creatures that still looked unconvincing on camera. Behind the scenes, the production was grueling. Lynch has described the experience as a slow suffocation of his creative instincts. His original cut reportedly ran over 4 hours. Universal demanded he reduce it to slightly over 2 hours for theatrical release. Entire subplots were removed. Character motivations vanished. Audiences who had not read the novel were completely lost. Dune opened to a disappointing $6 million weekend.
Why prolong the inevitable?
It finished its domestic run at $30.9 million against its $40 million budget. Worldwide grosses reached approximately $40 million total, meaning the film barely broke even on production costs alone before factoring in the massive marketing campaign Universal had mounted. The studio lost tens of millions when all costs were calculated. Number 3. Jupiter Ascending, 2015. Jupiter Ascending had been delayed an entire year before release. Originally scheduled for summer 2014, the additional year cost an estimated $15 million in extra post-production work on top of the already staggering base budget. Mila Kunis was paid $10 million to play the lead. Channing Tatum collected a similar figure. Eddie Redmayne, fresh off his Oscar campaign for The Theory of Everything, came aboard as the villain. He won a Razzie for it. He has since spoken about the role with diplomatic amusement. Behind the scenes, the production was an exercise in controlled chaos. Filming took place across multiple countries, with enormous practical sets built in the UK, alongside digital environments that required hundreds of visual effects artists working across 2 studios simultaneously. The flying boot sequences alone consumed months of wire and digital work. The production built entire alien bureaucratic worlds with their own visual grammar, their own architecture, their own logic. None of which was adequately explained to the audience watching at home. Jupiter Ascending earned $47 million domestically and $183 million worldwide, against its $176 million production budget. After marketing costs of roughly $100 million, the total loss exceeded $180 million. Warner Brothers absorbed the wound quietly. The cultural autopsy was brutal and immediate. Frame by frame, Jupiter Ascending is genuinely stunning. Scene by scene, it makes almost no narrative sense. A proof that sometimes complete creative freedom is the most dangerous thing a studio can give a filmmaker. Number 2. Battlefield Earth, 2000. John Travolta had been trying to make Battlefield Earth for nearly a decade before cameras rolled. The film was based on the novel by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, and Travolta considered bringing it to screen. Franchise Pictures agreed to produce the movie. The budget was set at $73 million. Travolta was paid $20 million for his role as the alien villain Turl. He also served as the producer, giving him significant creative influence over every major decision. Director Roger Christian, who had won an Academy Award for set decoration on Star Wars, was brought in to helm the project. The film was shot almost entirely using extreme Dutch angle camera tilts, meaning nearly every single shot in the movie is filmed with the camera rotated between 30 and 45 degrees.
Now! Go!
This was described as a deliberate artistic choice meant to create alien unease. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was described by crew members as reverential toward Travolta in ways that made honest creative feedback almost impossible. Battlefield Earth opened in May 2000 and earned $21 million worldwide against its official $73 million budget. The film swept the Razzie Awards so completely that a special category was eventually created in its honor. In 2010, the Razzies named it the worst film of the entire decade. Number 1. Fantastic Four, 2015. There is a film at the very top of this list that did not just fail. It collapsed in real time, publicly, with the director live tweeting his disowning of it the night before it opened, studio executives briefing journalists against their own movie while it was still in theaters, and a post-mortem so ugly that it permanently altered how Hollywood thinks about franchise filmmaking and director selection. Fantastic Four 2015 is not just a box office bomb. It is the most documented creative catastrophe in modern superhero cinema. Josh Trank had directed Chronicle in 2012 on a $12 million budget and delivered a genuinely innovative found-footage superhero film that earned $126 million worldwide. Fox saw a prodigy. They handed him $120 million and one of Marvel's oldest superhero teams and essentially told him to reinvent the franchise after the previous two entries had underperformed. Trank had a vision. Fox's marketing department had a completely different vision. That collision produced one of the most destructive production environments in recent memory.
Always so smug, thinking you were smarter than me.
The night before Fantastic Four opened, Josh Trank posted and then deleted a tweet stating that he had a fantastic version of the film a year ago that audiences would never see. That single act of public disowning, published hours before the film hit theaters, was unprecedented in studio filmmaking. Directors had distanced themselves from films before. Nobody had done it in real time on social media while the marketing campaign was still running. Fantastic Four opened to $26 million in its first weekend, well below the $50 million Fox had projected. It earned $56 million domestically and $167 million worldwide, against a production budget that with reshoots had climbed past $120 million. Marketing expenditure pushed the total loss past $100 million. A planned sequel was canceled within weeks of release. What Fantastic Four 2015 represents at the top of this list is something more instructive than simple failure. It represents the precise moment when a studio hired a filmmaker for his vision and then systematically dismantled that vision under financial and franchise pressure until neither the director's film nor the studio's film existed anymore. Let us know in the comments, which of these films have you watched or will you plan to watch in the nearest future? If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button and share to a fellow retro sci-fi fan.